Where did he come from in your heart and your head?
There be carnage.
Dating for me, I didn't know what to expect. I'm about to come talk to somebody, and I think sometimes we think about counseling like, oh, you're going to sit down with this professional and they're going to just fix your life. But first, you got to have some type of comfort with that person. You got to feel like you can be fixed. You got to get over pride, any type of narrative that you might have. So yeah, counseling was an option. Before things went bad in the marriage, we went in already with problems that probably should have stopped us from getting married. So whenever we actually went and sat down with our counselor, honestly, it felt worse. I don't even want to put his name out there, but
it was a he.
It was a he.
Okay.
In the way that the session was handled, and I'm not shaming or blaming anything like that. But I don't think he was quite aware of how I was already receiving some of the things that she had to say. Yeah. And it was just her truth and nothing wrong with that. But the way that I received it actually set things back because I didn't want to go to no more counseling after that one session. I was so triggered.
What was it about the counseling that kind of made you like, hell, I don't want to do.
Cool, baby. Listen, welcome, guys. Welcome, guys. Welcome, guys. Listen, we're talking to you guys about Derek Jaxn. It's crazy. He had an interview with Willie Moore. He sat down with Willie Moore to tell it all. And I think it was quite interesting. There was a lot of things that we learned. I would say that, there were probably 8 key things, probably more than that, but I put 8 different zones that I can kind of tap into. But there were actually around about 15 or 16 questions that were actually asked in the interview, and so I kind of made notes on each particular question that was asked, and so we'll go through those questions, and hopefully I can do that in an hour or so. Probably won't be able to, but you know. But what I want to say is, here's my observations. Right, my first thing is this: number one, if you're expecting Willie to hold him accountable, he weren't going to do that. He told you from the very jump of the actual interview, he isn't here to hold him accountable. He's here to have a conversation and to hold a safe space for him. So if you were looking for him to hold him accountable, this was not the interview for you. He's not going to hold him accountable. He's just going to ask questions and try to understand it. Number two, Willie let us know that also he knew him offline before he knew him online. Therefore, he has a different relationship with Derek Jaxn than most of us would have when it comes to Derek Jaxn. Okay. I think number three, one of my observations that I saw from Derek Jaxn is that I think there's a space for him, that there's a space or a need for him to have conversations about who he really is. One of the things that I think I found very difficult with myself, and some of the things that I have seen with Derek Jaxn, there isn't a space, and he probably hasn't created a space for himself to talk about what he actually feels. Okay. And when I say feels, what I mean by that, not necessarily about the relationship, but about him. Where's his space to actually start speaking about some real stuff that he's thinking and feeling? If you're always in the advice and coach role, when do you get to take off the armor to actually start talking about you? And I feel like this interview was a little bit more about that aspect in terms of talking more about him. Now, he gave us a good background and, give us some key information about who he is, and even surmise a little bit as well about, why he is the way that he is. I'm not vexed at it. I'm not angry at it. And whether we agree, whether we believe him or not, that's another question as well, right? I think another thing that I kind of see my overall thoughts on this is the key question I'm asking myself is this a genuine, accountable Derek Jaxn, or is this another grift? I'm asking that serious question, and I'm holding out the judgment for now. My reservations for watching this interview, when I was watching the interview or the conversation, as I say, a bit like the Karen conversation, there wasn't any crossfire. So I don't know how you're going to handle when someone disagrees with you. Right? In this situation, somebody was agreeing with you and providing you the safety and the space to talk freely about what you've gone through without actually fact checking or saying something different. And neither of them had fully watched the interview of his wife, which I think is just ludicrous. I just think to myself, why would you not watch the interview with his wife? Because it's going to be about this conversation you're going to have with Derek Jaxn. That just blows my mind. Derek Jaxn then also said he didn't watch the whole interview all the way through, but then at a point quite cheekily kind of told us that, there were some things that she said that weren't necessarily true, but he didn't want to start doing back and forth and tit for tat, etc., right? So I found that quite interesting as a point as well. So I'm asking that key question: is it genuine accountability, or is this a part of the grift? I think time will tell. I think another thing I noticed also is he mentioned very quite clearly that the issue was with him. He said that she had some problems, but he specifically was talking about himself, and saying that, because he forgave his father, who actually wasn't there for him as a child, he felt like that he had healed from that, but in reality all he had done was forgiven his father, or at least he had let go of the initial anger towards his father, but he hadn't actually done the work to heal from the absence of his father, which I thought was real. I ain't gonna lie to you. I think he beautifully explained that. I'm not going to be mad at the way that he broke that particular part down as well. Another part is mentioned about the counseling sessions. They weren't great, and he made a mistake in choosing her in the space that he was actually in. I don't know if he heard some of my reviews. I don't know if he heard some of my reviews or what, but it sounded like he was taking some of my lingo. I started looking like, hey, did he watch my review? Because I was like, hey, some of the stuff that he's saying, I swear that my last video on Derek Jaxn, that's the kind of stuff I was breaking down. Hold on a minute. Did he watch my review? I was looking at it like, yo, they went through the whole like childhood and everything. I was like, wait, hold on a minute. I remember breaking down his childhood not long ago, all this stuff, grew up with sisters looked after him. I surmised all of this. And I was like, wait, did he watch one of my videos? Because the way he breaking it down, like, I was like, But he was basically saying that, he knows that from the time when he chose her, like, she wasn't bad, but he chose her out of a place where he was broken, and he wasn't in the best place to choose her officially, because he had healing to do, and that's something that he put on her that she couldn't do, right? So that was interesting as well, that he said, someone said I better write the book before he does. Lol. Very funny. And so that was another question as well. So there's quite a few things in there that were happening. Let me just say some of the questions that will come up, some of the questions that came up, and I'll break this down a bit later on. How did you grow up? Was asked. A fatherhood without a father being present, what was that like? He's asked also, where did the social media persona come from? He also spoke about Derek Jaxn and his wife and some of the fears he had. They asked about which part did you not like about Daenerys Jackson's story. They spoke about obviously being 14 years together on and off, which is more like 9. He said little Derek, he asked a question about little Derek, what's his advice to little Derek, his son. He dated the girl of his dreams. He said that Daenerys Jaxn was the girl of his dreams, but obviously he had made some faults there. Why does divorce come up when you're happy? And you speak so fondly of Daenerys Jaxn, summer place. They asked him, could you live up to the standard that you've spoken about? Then they spoke about the virality of Derek and her, and how he felt about it. And it was interesting because obviously, what happened with Derek and Daenerys Jaxn, that video that went viral where he was holding her hand on the thing, they explained all of that as well. Then they asked about the fact that he's always been called a narcissist. How does he feel about that? He spoke about that. And the last 3 places, they spoke about Christianity, which this is the part I didn't like. I'll be honest with you. This is the part I didn't like, not because of the Christianity, but I don't like people playing pianos at a key point. Like, at a key point where we're preaching, please don't play the piano, because I want people to hear it absolutely true. And I know the piano just adds a little bit. As soon as I heard the piano, I was like, sure, I ain't even listening no more. I'm not even listening too tough, because y'all trying to sell me something. Whenever you start the piano with a beautiful sound behind it as you're talking about Jesus, I don't need you to do that. Just tell me, okay? Then they asked him, have you forgiven yourself as well? And that was interesting. And then the last question, which I'm gonna lie to you, I think I fell asleep, so I might have missed 2 questions in between. I fell asleep for a second or 2. Can't lie to you, I was falling asleep. I don't know what it was. It might have been the strawberry juice or whatever. But they asked him a question about the perfect type of woman as well. So that's just a quick summary. If you do watch this interview, I want to say this is what you're going to pick up. You are going to get a far more detailed background of Derek Jaxn. You're going to get far more conversation around his thoughts around the marriage and the impending divorce. You will hear some accountability, I won't lie to you, and you will hear a lot of what he says relating back to the fact his son, specifically, he talks more about his son, and how he's impacted by the behavior that he has done. So, there is some accountability there. I'm just wondering, is this accountability you making a ploy again, because he's a very smart person? Is this a part of the ploy, or is it genuine? And, I'm holding that reservation out. I want to see his dear future wifey conversation, because when he asks him some real questions and crossfires, let's see how he handles that particular aspect as well. And then finally, when he's and so that's what you're gonna hear as well. So we're gonna definitely tap into this interview, okay? But before we do, there is 272 people in this room. So before we get any further along the way, okay, before we get any longer around the way, I need you to do me a massive favor, okay? All right, I want you to do a massive favor for me. First and foremost, I want you to I want you to like, share, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, click on the black bell on that place, because when you do the notifications, you need to click the black bell. That will let you know about every time I go live. The reason why some of you guys are missing lives and missing some of the videos is because you have to turn the bell to a black button. Okay, they said, listen, we gonna get you right, black folk. The black button means you get it all. So click on that black button and you'll get all the notifications whenever I go live as well. And for those of you who are returnees, you already know what it is, baby. You got the minerals. You got the minerals. Stay hydrated. All right, cool. Let's talk a little bit, you know, as well. About this particular video. Let's drop the little intro, baby. You already know what it is. You already know what it is. You already know what it is. All right, cool. Let's get into this, guys. Let's get into this. All right, we'll do a little intro. You know what time it is. 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 Yes, we're back again, guys, and we're talking to you guys as well about Derek Jaxn and his interview on. It was on our brother Willie Moore YouTube. Willie Moore YouTube. I'll put the link in the in the chat as well, so you can see it. So you can go and watch it as well. Okay, all right. Let's get into this particular conversation. You know, as well. Okay, someone said there's a question. I'll put that as well. If you got any questions, put them in the chat. And what I will do is I'll star it and I'll answer questions at the very end. So if you've got any questions about what's happening or any even dope commentary, put it in the chat. I will star it and then we can discuss it at the end. Or if there's not enough time, what I will do is just we'll do another video maybe tomorrow or maybe later on. And then we'll see what happens from there. Okay. So let's get into this. Okay, let's get into this as well. I will speed it up a little bit just so that we can get through things as well.
Do this no more. Did he point out something in you that you was like, hold on, this is a biased perspective?
Yeah.
Or was it like, what was it that made you not want to do it?
So first going in, I was desperate. Like, you know, I'm doing everything right. We done came from years of being boyfriend and girlfriend in college, playing games, all that kind of stuff. So now I'm like, nah, I'm for real. We got a little 4 or 5 month old or something like that. We got a little baby.
Oh, so you were pregnant before you got married?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? What it is.
I don't have I had one 21, 22.
So we went in at a space where I was like, you know, I really want to do this right. I'm really serious. I done tried everything in my power to please you. At that time, I thought I could basically kind of perform my way into her love. If I got her the gifts, if I rubbed it back, if I asked her the questions, but it wasn't working. So by the time we got there, I was already beat up. And so when we got in there and then he just let her talk, well, what she had to say and the way that she had to say it, it was tough to hear, especially in front of a complete stranger. Yeah. And so there was me saying, well, I've been asking you and begging you to tell me what's going on. I would have done anything. Why is it that you can open up to him and trust him with this information? And then what she's saying was really hard to hear because I'm like, I've been in a different space for a very long time, performative wise. Right. I ain't actually did the deep work, but I've been showing up a certain way. So in that, I didn't really feel protected, man. And I realized something. Some counselors, like all counselors are not equal. I'm not saying equal in good or bad, but they do things differently. And
all right. So the first thing, sorry, I even put the wrong title because the first thing that we actually need to address is the conversation around the counselor situation. So, okay. So this counselor situation is quite interesting, right? Because he says when they went to the counselor, which was before they got married, okay, the counseling wasn't the best because he felt like it was one-sided, right? You know what? Again, I haven't been necessarily I wouldn't say in a professional counseling session with a partner. I've been in more of a counseling session. And in the counseling session, what he said is not a lie. I mean, I experienced it, right? So when I went to a counseling session, it wasn't a professional, it was a counseling session with a partner. What I saw was a counselor who only could see one side, and it was a male. So you know what? I'm not going to discard it and say it never happened. I'm not going to discard it and say, you know, that he didn't experience this because I've experienced it, right? And so I understand, right, that this could actually happen. What is interesting, though, is the juxtaposition, you know, the juxtaposition between Derek Jaxn and the counselor. This is a really important point. Derek Jaxn, you are that counselor. Right? This is really important. Derek Jaxn is that counselor. The very thing he's complaining about is the very thing he does on the internet. He's one-sided. right? So isn't it interesting that you go to a counselor and the counselor mirrors the very behavior that you put on the internet? You're not wrong. Some of the things that he says, Derek Jaxn isn't necessarily wrong. But what I'm saying is, you are no different than the counselor, and you met a mirror which was frustrating, yet it didn't cause you to look at yourself and go, maybe the advice that I give is a bit one-sided. Right? So it's interesting that he felt some type of way, and he's not wrong for feeling that type of way. We still honor his feelings. I'm not going to discard it. But it is interesting that you on the internet are somebody who plays a role where you talk about other situations with women, and the way you talk about it, it often takes the woman's side without considering any other nuances. And in fact, you intentionally pander because it makes good money, and because, again, you said yourself, you come from a female background, and from a female understanding, and you're here to protect women, and right? So I understand that in some respect, that when you're on the internet, you pander. And so you met somebody in real life who maybe not pandering, but saw her position and didn't see yours. And I want to be very honest with you. Obviously, doing some of my own relationship coaching myself with couples, I try to be very conscious about my own biases. Like, I try to. It's impossible not to be biased. Let's be honest. But I try to be conscious of that, because there are some things where I'm more biased to women, and there's some things where I'm more biased to men. But what I try to do is I try to find a balance. In fact, if anybody's done some coaching with me, you'll realize I try to find a balance between the two people, right? Because it's not one-sided. It can never be on one side, right? So when I'm dealing with couples, when I'm talking to them, I'm like, did you hear what they said? Now, I may not agree, but I'm saying, did you hear what they said? Right? Okay. Did you hear what I said? Right? That's the most important thing. Did you hear what I said? And so I try to get couples to hear what each other is saying. I literally was doing a session, and it was impromptu with a good friend of mine. And I sat there, and as I was listening, I heard both of them speak, and I was like, y'all do the same thing. You don't realize that? Right? I see your point, but I see your point too. And so all we got to try and get the other person to do is hear what you're actually saying. Okay, right? So that's a key point in all honesty. And yes, we're right. There's not always, men are not always so forthright and coming to want to go to therapy. Let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it real. But yes, it's important to kind of keep a without the bias in there. So I heard him on that part. I'm not going to say that I disagree or say I have a different story. I'm just being conscious of the fact that does happen in counseling sessions. But like you guys said, he only went once, so we can't really say 100%. And there was no commitment to find another, if that's the case, or seemingly, we don't know, because he might have had another, but you know what I mean? So let's go. All right, let's go into the next part. All right. Okay.
As for me and where I was at, and based on where we had gotten to, man, I didn't need that type of counseling. Yeah. So it kind of scared me, man.
So kind of bring me back, like, as I said, I met you, we were doing, personal development and all of that. Mm-hmm. But I never really ever asked you from the beginning. Like, I often tell people, to understand me, you would have to understand that I was adopted when I was 3 months old by 2 ex-sharecroppers, one from Mississippi, the other one from Louisiana. Yeah. I grew up in a home where there wasn't a lot of arguing, although I never...
all the time. Mm-hmm. My sisters were the ones I mainly grew up with. My brother was a little older, and he kind of was on his way out the house by like 6 or 7, but it was basically my 2 elder sisters, closer in age, and my mama. So I was in a house full of women. Well, a lot of people ask me now why I'm always speaking up for women. It's like, well, that's what I grew up with. But my mama seemed to connect much better with my sisters than she did with me. Wow. And then whenever my mama would come home from work, I mean, of course, she's human. She's in her early 30s. She's tired. She just needs time to be a human. But a child, we're inherently, to a degree, narcissistic, because we're trying to figure out the world, and everything means something about who we are. So for me, whenever I got tired, mama, that already kind of struggled to connect with me, but could, connect well with my sisters, and daddy ain't there. Meanwhile, other people got their daddies. What I internalized, apart from the truth of the situation, was that Derek's not worthy of love.
Now let's pause it here. I think it's really important, right? It's so interesting. This is when I'm listening to him, I'm like, did he listen to my video? I promise you, I'm asking myself, did he listen to my video? Because this is exactly what I said in my video. I'm like, I'm scratching my head. I was listening. I was like, that last video I did on this is exactly what I said. I said, and also the fact that it's weird because he mentions things that I mentioned. I said about how children are narcissistic. I mentioned the fact that, you know, the growing up around him, of course, this is his life. So I'm just saying, but it was just weird. I was like, I was like, that's exactly what I said in the last video about you. I'm like, wait, did you watch it? You know, I thought, did you watch it? Because I was like, that's exactly what I said. I said, But I was like, hey, you know what? He's a smart man. He comes to his own thing. But no, so what he's describing there, absolutely right. Because the last video I did on him, I went to do some background research and I presented to you guys. I said, I showed you the internet clips of it. I went on and I said, I spoke about how he grew up around a house of women. I spoke about how, you know, when he went, why are you bugging? Sorry, guys, my internet. But then okay, cool. Sorry about that. My internet was bugging there, and my noise went. So I spoke a bit about. I spoke a little bit about the growing up in the household. I spoke about you know, the difficulty in terms of being raised by your own sisters. I spoke about obviously the fact that, you know, the father figure not being there as well. I spoke about obviously how, you know, that household where you're a male in a female dominated household and then not having that father figure as well, how difficult that can be. Now, what's interesting is what he speaks about here. He speaks about the fact that growing up, he's the youngest of 5. They didn't have much money, and then his mother obviously working 2 jobs. It's interesting to see how you know, his mother in this instance wouldn't have had necessarily a connection with him the way he wanted. And this is what I keep saying about the importance of fathers, that you cannot have like, and this is what I'm saying about in 2-prong. I don't need women talking about we can raise children by themselves. You can't. And I don't need Negroes and men, okay, canceling and dipping out on their children. I want to say it very clearly again. I don't need women talking about I've got money, I've got a stable job, I've got a career now. All I need now is just have a child by myself. You are creating trauma for that child. Number 2, I don't need men out here ditching, dispatching, running away, not holding their responsibilities emotionally for that child. Because this is exactly what we're talking about when children have issues, when parents are not around, right? So in this instance, what he described here is a perfect description of a child that, like he said himself, it wasn't necessarily the worst childhood. All it was is that there was no connection. So when him and his mother are connecting, he realizes the mother and the daughters have a better connection than the mother and he does, right? That's fair. It happens. You know, what he needed emotionally was not being supplied and given by the mother the way he needed it to be. That's not to say the mother was bad. Listen to what I'm saying. It's not to say the mother was bad. It's to say that it takes 2 to tango. The fact that she didn't have as much energy to do this because she's working 2 jobs, trying to make sure that she makes ends meet, and she's trying to do her best to provide for the family. And as he said himself, what he realized is that he was lacking in the emotional aspect from his mother. And because of that, what he then saw was a comparison between himself and his sister being the golden child. And in that, what he saw was that he wasn't getting the attention that he required. So what did he do? He chose another lane. Which was to become the bad kid. And that was the way that he got seen and he got heard, right? To become the bad kid, that's how he got seen and that's how he got heard, right? So this was his way of doing it. So yeah, you know, there's a real conversation that needs to be had about how he feels about his mother. Like, and I'm gonna keep bucking with you. I did a live with Dear Future Wifey, and I've been thinking about it for the last few days. I said some wild stuff on that live. I did a video of Dear Future Wifey, and I said some wild stuff about my relationship with my mom. I don't blame her for nothing. And I was talking about the fact that my mom's gone through mental health, schizophrenia. And I said, I feel so disconnected. I said, I feel so disconnected that I said some wild stuff. You're gonna have to watch it. I don't want to spoil it. That's some wild stuff that somebody will look at and go, raw coach, is that you? Are you really saying that? That is wild and that is dark. But the reality is I wanted to really be truthful about how I felt. And how I felt, it ain't cool. How I really feel is painful. I feel numb at points. Do you know what I'm saying to you? So, parts of me understands where Derek Jaxn's coming from. And that's why I keep saying that as a young boy, we need a different type of attention. This is why father figures are so important. And it's why I'm saying that as men, I need you, okay? I need you not, okay? All right, I need you not to be disappearing, to be dispatching and distancing yourself from your kids. They need you. And they need you healthy, they need you emotional, and they need you present. Okay, that's also important. You're absolutely right, guys. You were right on that point. All right, let's go. But that's just some wild things about the parent situation. Y'all gonna see on that live, but whoo, baby, you might see me differently. Okay, y'all might see me differently about how I spoke about my parents. I ain't gonna lie to you. Now, I think this is key. Okay, I think this is key. Just gonna say, y'all can hear. Mike, what happened? Hold on, guys. Sorry. Okay, sorry. What the? How does sound go out? Because the sound is on for me. What the? How did the sound go out? What? All right, hold on. I don't know what happened because that should not be happening. This internet, honestly. Hold on. All right, tell me if you can hear it, guys. Tell me if you can hear it. No? What is going on? Raw, how are you not able to hear it? What? Yo, what the hell was suddenly just how did this suddenly stop working? That is nuts. That is nuts. I've not muted anything. It's exactly the same thing. Okay, we're gonna go back. Don't worry, we're gonna get it back, guys. We're gonna get it back. We're gonna get it back. I don't know what in the world is going on. Someone said
she's in her
can you not hear
30s, she's tired. She just needs time to be a human. But a child, we're inherently to a degree narcissistic because we're trying to figure out the world and everything means something about who we are. So for me, whenever I got tired mama that already kind of struggled to connect with me, but could connect well with my sisters, and daddy ain't there, meanwhile other people got their daddies, cool. What I internalized, apart from the truth of this,
let's get forward.
Into acceptance. I can expect people to either abandon me or just want to get away from me because I'm so bad. That's all I ever heard. I'm bad, he's bad. She tried to find a babysitter. Hey, he's bad. He's gonna get on your nerves. So
that's what your mom would say.
That's not even what my mama would say.
Okay.
This was what everybody else would say. Because she's getting judged. She's a single mother. She got all these kids. We don't really look that much alike. I'm 6'5", I'm dark skinned. My next elder sister, she's 5'2", light skinned now. We look different. So, just a judgmental society already, and she always needs somebody to keep her kids so she can keep a job. But I'm the one that's hard to deal with. I'm the one that's going to have somebody get in trouble. Right. So essentially, man, that was it. Not a lot of money, not a lot of attention. Not a lot of connection, even though I had a well-meaning mom. I mean, that's like my superhero. I love that woman. And I understand now in hindsight what it really was. But as a kid, man, I identify with a lot of rejection and abandonment.
Got it.
So, interestingly enough, so what he goes on to say, I think this is a key part. Okay. Like this key part, like I swear that he must have listened to my video, I swear to God. But no, this is a key part, right? Abandonment is one of the biggest things, man. Abandonment, when people start feeling abandonment and fear, the aspect of control comes out so quick, right? When people are afraid that someone's going to leave them, their behavior becomes controlling, and sometimes that comes out in a really mad way, or sometimes that comes out in a really subtle way, right? But all in all, when fear is taking control, it begins to distort behavior. Now, what's really key is that he surmised his own situation. He said, you know, hey, look, I had a feeling of abandonment. I felt like, I wasn't connected with my parents as well. And, also at the same time, I felt like, and it's interesting he mentioned about color. I don't know if you guys noticed, he mentioned about him being dark skinned and his sisters being light skinned as well. That was also a big thing. But rejection and abandonment, yeah, absolutely. And a lack of connection as well from childhood can make you numb. And this is, look, I'm gonna say this, and maybe it's I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a grace of God. Maybe it's a training I've had. I am maybe 2 steps away from, I'm not that different to Derek Jaxn. You know what I mean? Like there's a fine line between me and Derek Jaxn. Right now, I'm probably never, and the reason why I said it's a fine line is maybe because, yes, maybe I won't go as far as to cheat in front of the house that they're going with and do videos from there. But the reality of the situation, when you feel like you ain't gonna get caught, when you feel like you've been doing something for a very long time and you've been getting away with it, you start to become very arrogant, and it looks some type of way. So I'm gonna be real with you. Like, if you feel like you can get away with something, you start to do things in a different way. So although I want to come hard at Derek Jaxn, and I will break it down. I also I'm understanding like, I'm not that different to Derek Jaxn. There's like there's a little in between. You know what I mean? There's a little in between, that it could easily be the same way, right? Now, of course, I've never mistreated a partner in this particular way, but again, I'm not too far away from there because, and maybe the fact that I had a father that was physically present and somewhat emotionally present, that I'm not that particular way. But maybe if my father wasn't there at all, I could easily be there. You know what I mean? I could easily be there. You get what I'm saying to you? So I'm not trying to say I'm not saying we should take it easy on them. I'm just saying I'm being very real. I'm throwing myself in it as always I do. I'm being and saying, look, hey, look, there is there's some reality, there's some real truth here. Like, you could easily be in that situation as well. I don't think they're officially divorced though.
Yeah.
So Derek, I want to ask you this. I realize there's no father in the crib.
This is important.
And, I always like to build a bridge of heart real with you when our social media, not social media, but the live presentation. So when I seen you on social media, I was like, oh no.
Let's get this
around at those really pivotal ages of our life. Was it a man in the home, or you just never really rock with guys like that and didn't have a person that you really rock with?
Yeah, so my dad was out of the picture, I would say about age 4. And I always heard that
so you had the first 4 years with him?
First 4 years.
Okay.
So I always heard that he loved me and all that kind of stuff. But then when, of course, he wasn't there, I was like, why didn't he love me enough to stick around? So again, that was kind of the story of my dad. Of course, there's males around. I mean, I played football. There's guys in the church, but ain't nothing like trying to define yourself as a young man, except for by like, okay, what does my dad think of me? What does the male, who am I really, like the features on my face, my middle name, like that guy, what does he think of me? And that was kind of how I defined myself. But growing up as far as OGs and stuff like that, man, it was my mama that I saw. I know a lot of people have males, but I'm like, I don't see my mama putting in work. My mama's the real one. When the storms turn out the lights, or, she got to make $100 stretch for a whole month for groceries, it's my mama I see. So when I get to talking on any type of subject, that's the viewpoint. It's like, I'm going to defend my mama, I'm going to defend my sisters. Right. While a lot of guys thinking bro code, I'm thinking real code. Like the truth is, I saw my mama crying from some of the things that guys was doing. Now, granted, that don't make me any more perfect or appropriate in how I'm acting, because that's a whole different conversation. But it was really true to the game. Like when I'm sitting here, they ask me a question about, okay, if a woman gets hands put on her by a man, like is she at fault? She did something wrong? I'm like, no, that's crazy. That man made his own decisions. So that was the code. I'm like, I'm thinking about it, not only is my mama like, but my sisters is listening, my future daughters is going to listen to this. And really, that was my viewpoint. It's like, whether I do good, bad, or ugly, it's me making these decisions. It ain't. nobody else. And what I saw normalizing these conversations was a lot of projection onto women. It's a lot of politics. You know, you shouldn't speak so loud, and then your man wouldn't do you like this. You should dress differently, and then your man would see you as worthy of being faithful too. And it's like with me and all my flaws, I'm like, no, anytime I did something, I had a choice, and I made my choice, and that's the bed I made. So
I think this is where I really identify with Derek Jaxn, right? So I think this is where I think it's really important, right? Because he says something really key. So when I first started YouTube, my first idea was around breaking the dating code. I wanted to expose a game of men so that women could understand why these men do what they do. But let me be very real with you. Let me keep it 100 a buck with you. You know what I mean? And this is why God is so important, but this is why friends are important. This is why people around you are so important, because they start to show you some of this stuff. Okay. When I first started YouTube, right, I wanted to talk about relationship from a Christian point of view, but I also wanted to do videos where I expose the game so ladies could have to understand what's going on. And here's why. I had a cape on. Inadvertently, I was still doing savior complex through my YouTube. Let's talk about it. Okay. All right. Let's talk about it. Inadvertently, you know, I was trying to save the ladies in the chat. You know, I wanted to save them. I wanted to fly my cape, you know. So part of the motivation as to why I was doing, not necessarily doing certain videos, but why part of the motivation why I spoke about certain subjects, yes, it was to protect the ladies. Yes, it was to protect those who I see as my sisters. But really and truly, if I really deep it, it's a cape. It's not just that I want to save my sisters, you know, save the future daughters and stuff like that. Yeah, that's cool. But that's not why. The reality of the situation, when I go down to a deeper, darker motivation behind what that is, it's a cape. It's the savior complex. And it's because you can't save something else. And you're going to hear me talk about this on Latirius Whitfield's podcast, Their Future Wifey. Actually, I don't know, because we filmed it twice. I don't know if I actually said that in the second part, right? But when we did our first, we shot the thing twice, by the way, guys, and the first one didn't get saved. So, you know what I mean? But part of me has always had that Superman cape that wanted to save ladies, right? And so you want adoration, you want worship, you want to be admired, you want to be appreciated, you want to be uplifted. And that comes because you feel like you didn't have enough attention as a child. And what you're doing, in some aspects is trying to retrieve and trying to kind of change that narrative. That's part of it, right? But also the second part of it is too, like, if there's a disconnect between yourself and the mother, this is also important. If there's a disconnect between yourself and the mother, this can also create an aspect where you're trying to save the mother. Now, I think he saw some things with his mother. I think if we're going to be real about it, I think he saw some things with his mother that she might have been doing that he might have been trying to save her from. But the reality is you don't have no power to save your parent. Now, when you can't save your parent, you then try to save the partners or the women that you get yourself into, or, you know, quote unquote, i.e., right? Hence why his content is so full of, I call it caping and pandering, because there's no balance of the other side. And the reason being is because you got your cape on. Not because you're bad, but he generally sees it that way. And I'll tell you how I know this. We'll get to that part in a second or two. There's an over, how do we call this? There's too much, I don't want to say accountability, wrong word. An overbearing of responsibility. Let me put it this way. Yes, there's an overbearing of responsibility, right? So there's an overbearing of responsibility from Derek Jaxn. Let me explain what I mean by this, okay? When you believe that every action that you do will make that woman better, okay? So for instance, if I say, you know, when I used to say something like this, oh, if the man is confident, strong, he's a masculine man, it doesn't matter what woman he gets with, that woman will surrender and submit to him. You've put too much emphasis on the man, thinking that whatever he does, that woman will respond to. And it's not like that. People have their own will, right? People have their own will. And so when you as an individual put yourself in a position where you say, if I did X, Y, and Z, then that person would never, ever do something, then you're missing it. And I looked at myself and I was like, yo, I do the same thing. I put a lot of emphasis on if I do X, Y, and Z, then a person won't do X, Y, and Z. But the reality is, no, that is not it. What you're trying to do is have control over a scenario you have no control over. So when you say, if I do X, Y, and Z, then this wouldn't have happened, what you're really trying to do is take back control that you lost when you were a child. So for me personally, you're going to hear it in my interview with Tyrese Whitfield when I spoke about my mother, okay? About when I spoke about how that, because she got schizophrenia, but her first episode was run about, I would have been about 11, 12, or 13. I can't remember what time it would have been. And I remember the first time when they told me, the first time she actually properly had an episode. And I remember I just went numb. I just said, you know what? I'm not dealing with this. I'm not dealing with this. You know, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not dealing with my mom being schizophrenic. I'm gonna let them handle it. I don't want to be involved. That's too much emotions for me, right? Inadvertently, I couldn't save my mom, right, from schizophrenia, right? But I went numb. And so what happens is what you don't deal with, what you don't tackle, what you don't address will begin to emotionally leak later on in your life. So what I started realizing is I choose women. You know what? I used to love them. And I mean, love them. I love the women that are like, they've got a wall up. They're cold. I love the women that they're not in touch with their emotions. You know why? Because what I would get pleasure out of is fixing them. And you never really fix them. Right? You never really fix them. Do you see what I'm saying to you? You never really fix them because they need to work on themselves to be able to come to that place, right? So what I started realizing is that when I look at these women that I'm dating, I'm like, yo, you had this problem, and I liked it because it's like it made me. And here's the crazy thing: it's why I said ego is involved when it's build a bear boo. You get an ego boost when, okay, for instance, a girl's got a high wall. And she's like, but you know what? I trust you. And you're like, no, of course you trust me, babe. You know what I mean? I'm not like the other boys, you know. I'm not like the other mans out there, you know. You know what I mean? I'm not like the other mans out there, you feel me? Yeah. So when you start getting gas thinking that you're because that person maybe let you in or they let the walls down, etc., right? And in reality, you the problem. Right. And because you're so hyper focused, I need to make sure I note this down because let me make sure I post this up later on because this be hitting now. You know, I'll be spitting some bars right now. But because because obviously because obviously like you're trying to fix them, what you don't realize is because your focus becomes about trying to create such a safe space for the other person, you neglect how you feel. Here's the problem with that. When you negate how you feel, it's going to show up a little bit later on. When you get comfortable in that relationship, when they get comfortable in the relationship, when things are okay, then your craziness is going to pop out because in reality, you never solved your issue. You were so focused on them, you forgot you. And now that you no longer have that focus on them or you're tired of focusing on them, whichever one comes first, now you realize now your craziness comes out, but you don't even realize you're crazy because all you're thinking is, well, no, you're not supplying what I need. Do you get what I'm saying to you? So it's really important to understand that aspect. So when he's talking about being neglected and not having an emotional connection and the father figure and abandonment and that all of that stuff, it plays a huge part because every single time he's trying to get ahead of the devil. Every time he's going to try and get ahead of the devil. And when he tries to get ahead of the devil, what he's trying to do is that he's trying to say, before you abandon me, I will make sure you can't do it to me. And that's a big problem. You know what I mean? That's a big problem. Woo!
That's kind of the perspective I was coming from, man. I wasn't thinking nothing about no bro code. I didn't grow up with bros and stuff. Like, no, I saw my mom and my sisters going through it. And now I got a platform. She had boyfriend. She actually had a husband. By the time I was 15, I had my stepdaddy, Mr. Lloyd. Rest in peace. He actually passed away 2 years ago. But that's who taught me how to cut grass, taught me how to change my own oil. He the one that taught me how to roof. I got a roofing and stuff like that. He gave me a lot of that blue collar.
I seen the smile come when you talked about Mr.
Yeah,
Lloyd.
man. It's like, that blue collar country, man. You know what I'm saying? And he taught me a lot of those principles, but we never really got into like the relationship side of things. Anything relationship, I really got from my mom or my observation of my mom and my sisters.
Did he try?
Now the question is, he saw some. Listen to what he said. He didn't get no. He said very clearly. He said, I didn't necessarily get the male masculine input from my stepdad. I got that by observing. Let me tell you something. Derek Jaxn is a good observer. From one observer to another, Derek Jaxn is a great observer. Okay, he's a great observer, and he saw some things of his sisters and his mother and the way they date. Okay, all right. Whatever he saw with the sisters and the mother, he saw some things that, you know, and it's a bit like what I say about when I was younger. I was seeing some things with some ladies, and I'm like, yo, why are they going through this? Da-da-da? And your heart goes out to them, you know, and you try to quote unquote save them. But you're seeing some things, right? And so your whole message in some aspect is almost trying to save them. You know, you're trying to save them from heartache, and then you kind of what we call project that onto the rest of the world, like saying, hey, you know, I want to save all the ladies. I want to make sure all the ladies are good. I want to make sure all the ladies don't get played by the men like that. And so that's why his message is so concentrated from a woman's perspective, because he was grown by his sister. He was reared by his sister more often than not. Okay, you know, there was no real father figure except his stepdad, but his stepdad wasn't necessarily talking to him about relationships. And he intentionally lets us know the things that he gets in relationships is from watching them. Right? From watching them. So he's got great observational skills. He can spot these things. And that's how he has great content, because his observations are on point. That man is gifted.
Or was that just Derek?
That really wasn't his forte. You know, he one of them. He could get up 6 o'clock in the morning. He'd come back home at 6 p.m. or something like that. He tired. He ain't really talking too much. He'll show up. He'll make a joke here or there. We'll go fishing sometime. We'll do things like that. But not too much birds and the bees talk. Actually, by that time, I probably already been into birds and bees anyway. So
yeah, no,
someone asked a question, why did he pick up the negative stuff? In reality, the probably reason why he picked up the negative stuff is because there was wounds he was carrying, and he didn't sort out the wounds. You know what I mean? Like the you know, I said this on the interview with Latirius Whitfield. I said, there's a kill switch in me. I got 2 to 3 years before the kill switch ignites, and I'm probably going to nuke that relationship. And the reason being is because there's emotional wounds. You know, any emotional wounds that have not been sorted and have not been dealt with, they rear their ugly head later on in relationships. And I think the reality of the situation is, just like myself, like I'm saying with him, is that, you know, when you don't deal with it, unfortunately, especially the fact that you didn't have a father figure. See, when I was going wrong, I had a father figure. I had a strong one that if you decide to go wrong, I'm going to discipline you. This makes a very big difference. There is no father figure who would have been disciplining him when he was going wrong. Now, of course, stepdaddy was involved a little bit and, you know, showed him some things. But who, from that very young age, who would have been disciplining him? See, when you have that deep wound and you're trying to create attention to try and get, you're trying to get attention to try and get the, they're trying to get the attention of your mother and get that validation and everything. Those wounds, if they're not healed, they become very dangerous, bitter, unforgiving energy, right? And so what you'll realize with Derek Jaxn, that he would have gone off because there was no father figure to discipline him. Like, see, as a father figure, the father figure oftentimes is responsible for safe play. The father figure creates a boundary for how much you can play and say, hey, you've played enough. This is the boundary. Stop. Right? The mothers are usually there for attachment, but the father figures usually create the boundary in terms of what is safe and how safe it is to play and explore your environment, explore your world, explore and be creative as much. Father figures usually take that role because they create the physical boundaries for children. But when you haven't got that and you've got emotional wounds, there is literally nobody stopping you. The mom can't stop you. You know what I mean? It's gonna be hard for her because already she's working 2 jobs. Hey guys, sorry about that. My internet decided to bug out. I really think it's my laptop. You know, I've bought a new laptop somewhere, guys. By next week, we won't have this situation. So I won't be able to show the video for now until the internet comes back up. But I have the notes here as well. So yeah. So as I was saying about obviously the fatherhood aspect was really, really important because when you talk about when you're discussing Derek Jaxn's situation with the lack of fatherhood that's displayed with him, you'll realize that this brother is going through some things, right? And so the father creates this boundary that you need. He creates this boundary there where it's like, hey, that behavior unacceptable. But without that father figure present, without that father figure being involved, without that discipline and that person who stands in front of that person, you know, and says, hey, look, this is as far as you can go. Without it, that person's free to roam. And that's why he was in the position he was in. Now, what I wanted to even go on to the next part, and I guess I'm going to have to do it without it, so do bear with me as well as I go through this. He said he saw his mother be a real one, never saw his father. And then he said about how, you know, about the broker, etc., etc. He spoke about Mr. Lloyd, and how he helped him cut grass and how Mr. Lloyd wasn't much of a talker. Then they went on to the next question and said, where did the social media persona come from? Where did the social media persona actually come from? And so when he starts describing the social media persona, he spoke about obviously keeping himself out of example. He said, I don't usually use myself as an example, right? And I was like, okay, so my thing is this: whenever someone's giving relationship advice, it's hard for me to buy into people when they don't actually give you the truth about themselves. Like when they don't talk about they themselves, when they don't talk about what they've done, when they don't talk about you know, what they've actually been a part of, I get a little bit itchy. I'm like, well, if you can't really tell me what you do, how can I really trust you that you're being authentic and being true, right? But it's interesting that for Derek Jaxn, his whole persona is obviously the coaching aspect and tell other people about it, but we rarely hear about some of the things that he has personally done. Now, we heard it a little bit in the last few videos. I think we did a breakdown on a video where he spoke about himself and spoke about how you know, when he was speaking about the kind of man what video was it? And there was a video that he spoke about on his channel a couple of weeks ago, and I did a video on it, and he spoke, I'm not sure what the topic was about, but then he kind of inserted himself into it. And I was like, oh, this is one of the few times that he's inserted himself into a situation. All the other times, what he's done is create a persona who then speaks on something, and he stands as an observer. Now, the thing that I had an issue with is that when you always speak from a place of coaching or speak from a place of being an observer on somebody else, it's disassociative, right? It's never connected. So it's like, okay, I hear you and I appreciate the fact you're giving me all of this, but it's never really connected. You've never really connected the situation. You've never really connected you to a situation, gone like, well, I've been through a situation like this where I did X, Y, and Z. It's always that you are observing something else, or there's a character that you're talking about that has done this very thing. And I think to myself, that's where it becomes impersonal. So, you know, where did that social media persona come from? And he describes it talking about how, you know, for him, it was a situation where he, you know, saw his mother and sisters, how they dated. And that's what kind of aligned his thinking in some shape or form. You know, and says his content is about walking the highest true form that men should take as well. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I hear you. Listen, as men, we should take the higher form. And I agree. I think that's why ladies love you, because you're always talking about how men should walk the highest rope. But that's why I was saying about the pandering. What about the ladies? Where is the balance for you? Like like I said, because I've seen it myself, where I've been so intent on trying to put across how ladies feel, I forgot that I'm a man and I do have my own feelings. And let me tell you this truthfully, I don't know if the reason why his content the way it is, I feel like, is potentially hasn't found his voice. Now, someone might say he probably did because he's moving the way he did. I don't think he's found his emotional, deep chord voice. So at that point,
the content becomes about, yes, how ladies feel and how they want, but what about how you feel? What about what Derek Jaxn feels? Have there been situations where you've been with ladies who have done the wrong thing? Because by your content, it sounds like women don't do the wrong thing at all, right? And that's a journey that I had to undertake myself, where I had to find my voice. I had to find my way. That I have a predominantly woman audience, but how do I get my voice across? How do I say my piece? How do I get my point across and let them know that, hey, I see things differently, and as a man, I'm not going to agree with you. And actually, I think you're wrong. Like, how do we get to that space? I think that's what's important, right? And so I don't feel like he's found that emotional voice. I feel like he's still living with a cape on. And that's why we get the videos that we do from him, where it's always from a woman's point of view. It's almost as if he lives inside a woman's head. He just knows how they feel. And the thing is, the reason being is because he's very emotionally tuned. I know some people might not like it, but I'm going to say it straight. He's very emotionally tuned. And because of him being so emotionally tuned, he's able to speak the language, quote unquote, i.e. of what women feel and what they think, right? He's speaking quite their language and their lingo. The reality is, I'm asking myself the key question, which is, brother, did you actually have a voice yourself? That's the key question. Do you have a voice yourself? And that's the question we're asking you at this key point. Now, at this point in conjuncture, I'm going to leave it here because my internet decided to go down. And you know what? I said I wanted it to be an hour. There's a lot more to get through. I'll probably come on, I'll come back on in an hour or two, or whatever, when the internet comes back on, and do a part 2. But I want to do this part 1. There's a lot to get through. I think we got through like only 3 sections. There's so much to discuss on this video. But we can take our time with it. But yeah, that's just my personal thoughts so far on, like, I guess 20 minutes of the video and stuff. But let me see some of the comments. I said I was going to answer some questions. Hold on, let me just bring the camera a little bit closer to myself to see what you guys say, because I can't see nothing, kids. All right. Someone says in his femininity due to the upbringing. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. All right. You know. Okay. Man said that because he didn't have a voice. That's a fair point. I definitely hear that. He's talking what sells. That's a fair point. I'm not going to be mad at that. I definitely think he's trying to save his sister and his mother. Okay, definitely think that. As well. So let me see if I can get to some of the questions that you guys did. Sorry about that. Okay, I only said 1. The question was, I have to make it big because I can't see 9 on this phone. Is that internet? No, internet. Oh, the internet's coming back, guys. The internet's coming back. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna exit this one and I'm gonna do a part 2 because it's too long already. So, but a question. Let me answer it real quick. So, is Jaxn still qualified to give advice after many things he's done to his family, his wife, his children? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, is Moses qualified to be the leader of the Israelites? He's a murderer. If you really have changed, then yeah, you're qualified, I guess. If you really have changed, the question is whether he's changed or not. If he hasn't changed, then that's another question itself. All right, cool. I'm gonna jump off this one. I'm gonna start another live. My internet be bugging. I can't even